heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
The Simple Truth, rising up to explore the difficult topics of real life. Join us as we proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Havens.
It is great to be back with you on The Simple Truth. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of St. Joseph. Today is Testimony Tuesday, where we bring you real, live, first-hand testimonial accounts of the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. Our guest today is Michael O'Neill. He is a miracle researcher known as the Miracle Hunter. He's a graduate of Stanford University, a member of the Mariological Society of America, and the Theological Commission of the International Marian Association. His books include Exploring the Miraculous, 365 Days with Mary and 20 Answers, Apparitions, and Revelations. He's also host of the EWTN series They Might Be Saints, about the lives of future saints and the search for canonization miracles, as well as a radio host and a lot of other good work from Michael. But you can also find out more about that good work, more about Michael, going to his website, miraclehunter.com. And finally, if you are interested in booking Michael O'Neill for a talk, you can contact him via the Catholic Speakers Organization, catholicspeakers.com. Michael O'Neill, thank you for being with us. How are you today?
Hey, it's great to be with you today.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. We always begin at the beginning. We start with childhood. What was your early life like, your family, the culture that you grew up in?
Well, I'm a cradle Catholic, and I have my parents to thank for a strong faith growing up in the Chicago area. And I'm the oldest of two children. I've got a younger sister, and she's strong in her faith as well. And I went to local parochial school in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, and I went on to study at Northridge Preparatory School, which is an Opus Dei school in Chicago. And that led me on to future things as far as strengthening my faith and giving me the good academic background to get into Stanford and set my academic career going.
Wonderful. Was there a particular moment, a particular story, anything that you can recall that you could share with us in regard to your first awakening or realization, first becoming aware and saying yes to this fact that Jesus, this person of Jesus, second person of the Holy Trinity, this is God. He has come for us. He loves you. He has died for you, and you want to receive that love and love Him back. Any sense of when that really registered for you and you were really able to make that free gift of self back to Him?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I don't even have a good answer for it because my parents did such a good job of instilling that in me from the very beginning. I never had one moment where it clicked for me. It was always there. It was always something that was instilled with me. It was a given, and I've always treasured it and appreciated it all along the way, thanks to the strong upbringing of my parents and my education, especially in high school.
Outstanding, yeah. Was there any point at which, in growing up there, that it was your faith was challenged in some way by peers, by anything that would have been challenging to say, well, I'm not really sure if I've thought about it in this way before? Just common obstacles, anything that kind of stood in the way that you had to overcome in order to keep going strong in your faith?
Well, I think anytime kids go off to college, that's a challenging time for everyone. And that's really where the rubber hits the road and you have all the freedom you could ever want to do whatever you want. And so I think that was a time when I really needed to understand my faith further, make good friendships of other people who shared the Catholic faith. And you see a lot when you go off to college, but thankfully I went through unscathed. Obviously, there are challenges along the way, but you see everything. You see people who believe everything under the sun, and you have the opportunity to drop your Catholic faith and pursue something else or pursue nothing. And so all those opportunities were there going to a secular university like Stanford. And so thankfully, I think that given that it was not a Catholic university, that allowed me to cling stronger to my faith make good friends who also had a strong Catholic faith as well. So nobody's perfect along the way, but I really feel grateful for the strong upbringing I was given to always be able to fall back onto that. And for me in particular, especially as it relates to my current work, researching, investigating, and talking about miracles, I always had a sense of the miraculous, that there was a supernatural reality behind all this. It wasn't something that was just an academic understanding or something that my parents had taught me and I was clinging on to something from my youth. I had an understanding of there was a supernatural reality that is the grounding of our faith. And so I always fell back to that. And I even remember specific moments throughout college where, you can't discard the faith when you believe in the supernatural aspect of it. So I have that which carries through my work even today.
Yes, we're talking with Michael O'Neill, also known as the Miracle Hunter. Michael, when would you say, can you recall the first miracle that you would have hunted down, that you would have been researching, trying to get to the bottom of?
Well, I think even before I would say that I've researched miracles, I think the big seminal miracle, at least in my upbringing, related to something told to me by my mother. It's a little bit of a family tradition, or at least a family miracle, you might say. But my mother would always tell us this story about when she was young, her mother, my grandmother, fell away from the Catholic faith in sort of a dramatic fashion. And nobody really knows why that happened. But, she would say things like, why are you praying to these statues? And she'd throw away the rosary beads. And she was a Catholic at the, up to that point. But my mother had a great devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe, strangely. You might notice that I don't have a drop of Mexican blood in my body. But for whatever reason, in the 1950s in white suburbia America, my mother had this great devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe. And she prayed fervently and said, she made a deal with God. She said, God, bring my mother back to the faith. And if you do, every December 12th on the feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe, I will teach the children I teach in school, and she wanted to be a school teacher, about the miracles of the tilma and the apparitions of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And if you bless me with any children, they too will hear the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe every December 12th. And so sure enough, that was my grandmother came roaring back to the Catholic faith, and she died a Catholic in good standing with the church. And every December 12th that I can remember, my mom would recount those stories of Our Lady of Guadalupe and Juan Diego. And that always fascinated me, and it always stuck with me. And my mind became the second greatest story ever told. And so that's kind of what set me off to being interested in miracles and digging a little further, even in college and beyond, into Our Lady of Guadalupe. And that opened the door for understanding other miracles in the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm. Yes, outstanding. And so, what would you say to folks in terms of, I guess, your own personal experience, but just any advice in what you've seen in terms of how really understanding the miracles and hearing these stories, looking even into the science and understanding how it all comes to be, that this really does help one's devotional life, your life of faith? How does it all work together?
Yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting thing because miracles are claimed in various religions around the world, various sects of Christianity. There are miracles that are claimed, mostly healing miracles that are attested to. But in the Catholic Church, we have this strange collection of things that the Church will investigate with scientific rigor. And I came out with a new book this past year from Tan Books. It's called Science and the Miraculous, How the Church Investigates the Supernatural. And I go through all these various ways. We talk about Marian apparitions, when the Church uses things like brain scanners to find the brain activity of a potential Marian visionary, or Eucharistic miracles, where they test them and find true flesh and true blood is turned into actual flesh and into the body and blood and soul of Jesus Christ. But we see that testable by science, where you have type AB blood found on these consecrated Eucharistic hosts, or weeping statues, or incorruptible bodies of saints, or any number of other things like healing miracles. You have all those cases at Lourdes and in canonization causes. The Church really employs science to a big degree to validate and to rule out the cases of claimed miracles. And I think that we have to look at these things with a little bit of a skeptical eye. I think that we don't want to be too credulous and assume that everything is a miracle, that we would love of to be a miracle. It's not the case. A very small percentage of claimed things are in fact miracles, but there are cases that the church has no ability to overturn and says this is something that's worthy of belief. So while we don't need miracles for our faith, they're just a boost to our faith. The words and works of Jesus Christ is found in the Gospels, and the teachings of the Catholic Church are what we need to live a good moral life and to work our way to heaven. But those miracles sure are interesting, especially the cases that can be validated by science or given us some idea that they are believable cases of the miraculous. So I think miracles are extra interesting because they can give us that boost. We all struggle in faith at different times, but miracles can serve as that extra boost to have a strong life of faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very good. We're talking with Michael O'Neill, our guest today on this Testimony Tuesday, sharing some of his personal stories, some of the good work that he's been up to. You can learn more by going to his website, miraclehunter.com. And when we get back from the break, we're going to ask Michael to really delve into telling us that story of how he really got even more interested in miracles, and it became a passion where he's actually pursuing it in terms of the professionalism with which he does it, hosting shows about it, uncovering new lives of the saints, future lives of the saints with his series, They Might Be Saints. A lot of terrific work here by Michael that is very, very helpful to us. Again, yes, for someone to put in the work to show us, okay, what is the science behind this miracle? What is the truth behind this person and their private revelations? What can we get to? What can we understand? What is church approved? What might not be? How does it all go down? And there is a lot of a lot of good resources at his website, miraclehunter.com, to help you in terms of discernment of various things. Lots and lots of good stuff here with Michael O'Neill when we get back. But while we're heading into the break, maybe ponder how you got involved to get to where you are today. What struck your passion? And if we all just lay it out to the Lord once more, what else does the Lord have for us going forward? We're going to be right back. Stay tuned.
As part of our continuing effort to teach the sometimes lost beauty of our faith, we are broadcasting a special educational lesson every Wednesday called Lessons in Latin. These mini teachings from the Institute of Christ the King break down the history of the various parts of our Holy Mass. You can hear Lessons in Latin Wednesdays at approximately 5:15 a.m., 3:45 p.m., and 9:40 p.m.
Do you love listening to the Station of the Cross on your car radio, but sometimes find yourself driving outside the listening area? Never miss another minute of your favorite show. Download the iCatholic Radio app so you can listen anywhere in the world 24 hours a day. The iCatholic Radio app is available for your phone in the Apple Store or for your Android phone in Google Play. Visit thestationofthecross.com for more information.
At the Station of the Cross, we are blessed by the variety of donations our listeners generously contribute for our evangelization efforts. From planned gifts to employer matches, we even receive donations through transfers of stock. Please consider giving a gift of stock to help us continue sharing the love of God with our hurting world. If you are being called by God to donate through a transfer of stock from your brokerage account to ours, please ask your broker to contact us at 1-877-888-6279. Your broker will need to indicate the number of shares being transferred as well as the QSIP number of those shares. That's 1-877-888-6279. Thank you for considering a gift of stock to the Station of the Cross so that we can continue proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Michael O'Neill, a miracle researcher known as the Miracle Hunter. He also has a new book, Science and the Miraculous, How the Church Investigates the Supernatural. Finally, if you're interested in booking Michael O'Neill for a talk, you can contact him via Catholic Speakers Organization, CatholicSpeakers.com, and learn more about his good work over at MiracleHunter.com. All right, Michael, so Stanford, and then how did discernment towards the career choice choice go down, exploring miracles, how miracles have played such a role in drawing you into actually, who would even think that this could be a career choice? I'm going to investigate miracles, and this is going to be my career. Tell us about how it all happened.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. You've hit the nail on the head in the sense that there's no college degree or career path for studying to be a miracle hunter. There's no such thing. It's kind of an invented career path, but I feel really blessed that I get to do this. My life is divided in between the research and investigation of miracles and the telling the world about miracles. And so every week on EWTN Radio, I'm able to host a radio show called The Miracle Hunter. And then I host 2 television series, one on Fridays, which is They Might Be Saints, and the other is on Saturdays called Explore with the Miracle Hunter. It's a Catholic travel show. And it's really a great way to get to reach the faithful. People are interested in miracles. I think it's almost a universal thing. So I feel pretty lucky to be able to have that chance to spread the word on it. But back to your question of how did I get into this line of work? Well, I didn't go to Stanford thinking I was going to graduate doing this. This is something that I always had a fascination with miracles, whether it was from my mother's stories of Our Lady of Guadalupe or learning about the Shroud of Turin growing up. In 1988, I was, I think, probably in 8th grade or something like that when the Shroud of Turin testing came out, and that was such a big deal that that really caught my attention as well. And I remember there's this time at Stanford where I was, it was my senior year. I was doing a paper for an archaeology class, and I was going to write an article or a paper on Our Lady of Guadalupe's tilma, because this was my fascination given to me by my mother as a youngster. And so I really dug into it. And, you know, I had heard of these Marian apparitions like Fatima, Lourdes, and Guadalupe, the big 3 that everybody knows about. But I didn't really realize that there were hundreds or thousands of other cases around the world, that some of which have been approved by Rome and others are under consideration and others that have been condemned. And, you know, it's just such an interesting thing. So I kind of made a comment to myself as I was writing this paper. I thought, you know, I can't do this now. I'm going to become an engineer. I'm getting this fancy, shiny mechanical engineering degree from Stanford. But someday when I grow old, I'm going to come back to this and I'm going to really sink my teeth into it and really learn about miracles. And it was shortly thereafter where I got this piece of advice. I consider it the golden piece of advice I've gotten in my whole life. It was from Condoleezza Rice, who was then the vice provost of Stanford at the time. And she made this comment, well, you know, you've studied at Stanford, you put in all the work, you know, maybe you'll become an engineer, but whatever you do in life, even if it isn't your full-time thing, become an expert in something. And she went on to say that she was an expert in one tiny aspect of Czechoslovakian military history in 1 year. And she knew more about this one tiny thing than anybody else in the whole world. She kind of said, find your sliver of the universe and own it. And, you know, I thought that was such interesting advice. You know, everybody should be an expert at something, I suppose. And I thought to myself, what do I want to become an expert in? And sure enough, I said, well, I'd love to be the world's expert in miracles. And so I set out to register the website, miraclehunter.com. That wasn't really a thing that many people were doing outside of some businesses registering websites in the 1990s. But I did that. And over the course of many years, I've been populating it with information and data and studying it. And I have as many as 2,500 Marian apparitions cataloged on that website, and Eucharistic miracles and stigmata cases and healing miracles and the whole bit. I've been loading it up over the years, and this was mostly a private pursuit because miracles helped my faith, and I really wanted to know what were the real miracles, what were the ones that were believable, what are the ones that weren't believable. Was the Catholic Church always proposing the things that were truly investigated thoroughly? But I wanted to create a resource for people. The Vatican does not have a website or a section of their website at all that deals with miracles. They don't have anything like that. So I'd like to think that my website, miraclehunter.com, is the definitive resource. And so I built that up, and I did it quite quietly over the years. I still went on to become a mechanical engineer, and I would get emails to my website, and I wouldn't want anybody to know who I was. I would always sign my emails back, MH for Miracle Hunter. I didn't reveal my identity. It was sort of an engineer by day, Miracle Hunter by night. And eventually I started getting these invitations to speak and to write books. And Dr. Oz and Megyn Kelly contacted me, and all these opportunities came up, and the Virgin Mary opened up all these doors for me, and I just kept walking through them, I like to say. So it's been quite a journey, and it's been a real blessing. Again, there's no such thing as a career in miracle hunting. That's a made-up thing, but when you pair that with writing books and leading pilgrimages, and you can go to 206tourpilgrimages.com/Miracle Hunter to go on a pilgrimage with me. You can pick up my books. You can go to my radio show or TV show. So all these various puzzle pieces all come together to make this a tenable career. But it's a lot of fun, and I like being the person who gets to dig into these things and give my opinions on them. So I hope it helps people who are curious about miracles to have somebody, hopefully with a good head on their shoulders, to see what's real and what's fake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, incredible. Michael O'Neill is with us, the Miracle Hunter, themiraclehunter.com. Miraclehunter.com is the website. And Michael, can you share a little bit about how all of that impacted your faith, just diving into all of these miracles, apparitions? What has been the impact on your faith?
Well, the most amazing aspect for me is that I can't help but believe. It's impossible for me not to believe because of the things that I've seen, because of the things that I've studied, because of the overwhelming preponderance of evidence that shows that God is there as a loving Father, helping us here on earth, whether it's with miracles or any other way. I mean, it's absolutely amazing, the boost it's given me to my faith. And I find that when we talk about the impact that miracles have on individuals. I give talks around the country, perhaps as many as 20 to 25 per year. You can go to catholicspeakers.com to have me visit your parish. But after the talk, I always do this book signing, and people come up to me and they say, let me tell you my miracle story about my mother or my child, or how I lost the faith and I came back. Or they have all these incredible stories. And when you put them together, it's absolutely amazing. And one of my favorite projects that I ever worked on was the December 2015 issue of National Geographic. I actually got to contribute to the cover story of Mary, the most powerful woman in the world. And that was their biggest best-selling magazine in 7 years. It was amazing that so many people picked that one up. But what was so interesting about it is it hit the newsstands, and then I got a huge flood of emails. People said, thanks for the article, thanks for your contribution to the study of Mary, thank you for dedicating your life to this. But so many people said, I've seen Mary too. And so we have these cases, these perhaps 2,500 that have been cataloged, but then there are so many smaller cases that people have experienced on their own. These might not be the big ones like Fatima, but maybe they have these own personal reflections or interactions or connections to Mary that have inspired their faith too. So miracles happen all around the world, and I've been privileged to be able to hear people's stories about them. So the miracles that happen in my own life and the miracles of other people, and just like I said, the preponderance of data that comes through in building this website and otherwise, it's hard not to believe when you see all that.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, you must have a certain affinity, a certain love for Our Lady of Guadalupe, with the story being handed on to you at such an early age and such a big impact on your family. But any other miracles that really stand out for you personally? Anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Well, there was a case of stigmata that I was able to investigate. And that was a few years back. It was in the Chicago area, and that had such a tremendous impact on my faith. I mean, I remember. I don't want it to come off the wrong way, but this was appearing in my dreams or my nightmares or whatever you might say. This was such a moving experience to witness this with my own two eyes, and to meet this person experiencing this. These wounds of Christ, that it was absolutely remarkable. But I've talked to Marian visionaries. I've talked to every single bishop who has given an approval in the last 20 years of a Marian apparition. I've seen weeping icons. I've like I said, the stigmata. I've seen incorruptible bodies. I've seen the whole bit, and it's absolutely amazing what's out there. And in my book, Science and the Miraculous, I'd like to point out the fact that the church uses science whenever possible to rule out these cases of hoaxes. So if something ever passes the church's muster, where the church says, this is worthy of belief, it is established as supernatural, constate supernaturalitate in Latin, whenever the church slaps down that label on an event, you know it's legit because they use so much effort. They go through so much effort to rule these things out, employing science or looking at the psychological testing or looking over the details in a CSI-style investigation. The church is always trying to shut down miracles. That's the thing that people don't understand. That we see these big feast days, Fatima, Lourdes, Guadalupe, or Our Lady of Mount Carmel, or other big feast days of miracles in our church. But those are the extremely rare cases. In general, if there's a weeping statue in a church or a stained glass window that seems to have an image of Mary, the church would rather that window come down and people just come back to Mass and practice faith, the old-fashioned way, and not get caught up in the claims of miracles. So anytime the church is impelled to approve something as supernatural, we can take it to the bank as being an authentic case, because the local bishop does not want that going on in his diocese. So these cases are amazing that make it through to that final step, and so we can find a lot of inspiration in those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just we're about to hit the break. When we get back, definitely want to dive into more on the new book, Science and the Miraculous, how the church investigates the supernatural. But real quick, right before we go into the break, as far as that stigmata case, anything else you can share with us on that, just by way of conclusion? How did that all end up in terms of your investigation and its impact on you?
Well, just to keep it quick going into the break, I mean, I was able to witness it with my own two eyes. I was able to speak with the stigmatic personally and go through the incredible story of conversion that happened there. And this is not a case that has been officially validated by the church yet. It's still being monitored. And as the case with all stigmatics, they never declare anything to be an authentic supernatural case while it's still going on. Because what if the person started going the wrong direction? Then you have somebody who's tantamount to a canonized saint committing sin, for example. So they always wait till a person dies to give commentary on a stigmatic case. But it was amazing for my faith. It was incredibly inspiring, and I couldn't believe what I saw.
Mm-hmm. Incredible. Michael O'Neill is with us again, a miracle researcher known as the Miracle Hunter. When we get back from the break, we are going to talk with Michael more about his new book. You can get it at tanbooks.com, by the way. It's published by Tan, Science and the Miraculous, How the Church Investigates the Supernatural. So there's a lot to delve into here. Obviously, you can tell Michael is very knowledgeable, very level-headed, faithful man, and so to have him as a resource today, sharing more with us on this topic, is a great blessing. Very, very blessed to have him here and sharing a little bit of his story, also a lot of his work, especially as we get back into the second half of the show. But again, as we head into the break, think about your own story. Maybe lift it up to our Lord Jesus in prayer, and just give him full access to your life with an act of faith. And he is having his way in us every time we do make that act of faith and give ourselves to him authentically. He has given himself to us authentically. Let's receive that love him back. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. The idea that abortion bans should have rape and incest exceptions lies at the heart of legislative controversy in South Carolina. 5 senators have blocked the latest attempt to craft an abortion ban with an exception only to save the mother. The confusion for most people comes from the assumption that a woman pregnant from rape wants abortion. However, research from the Elliott Institute, including copious anecdotes, has long shown that the welfare of a mother and her child are never at odds, even in sexual assault cases. Planned Parenthood continues to show itself a giant in eugenic abortion with another record year for abortions. The latest 2020 annual report for the highly profitable nonprofit corporation shows an uptick of 30,000 abortions, now over 380,000 abortions annually. That's over 1,000 abortions each and every day of the year. This is Life News Radio. Persecution around the world has manifested itself through the centuries, but it is worse today than ever before. Aid to the Church in Need and its donors have been there to help since 1947, never abandoning the Church or her most vulnerable children. Will you stand up for your faith and accompany our brothers and sisters on their spiritual journey? Visit churchinneed.org. churchinneed.org.
In other headlines, Justice Neil Gorsuch says a report on the May 2nd leaker of the Supreme Court Dobbs documents can be expected soon. And a USA Today article is perpetuating the myth that children must be the enemy of success, especially in women's sports. Abortion obviously harms children. It also breaks women. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens with our guest today, Michael O'Neill, a miracle researcher known as the Miracle Hunter. He's a radio and TV host, author. You can go on pilgrimage with him. You can learn tons more about his good work by going to miraclehunter.com. Also has a new book out, Science and the Miraculous, How the Church Investigates the Supernatural, published by TAN. You can get it at tanbooks.com. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But if you are interested in booking Michael O'Neill for a talk, bring him into your parish, you can contact him via the Catholic Speakers Organization, catholicspeakers.com. All right, Michael, so the new book, Science and the Miraculous, How the Church Investigates the Supernatural. Can you share a bit of the backstory on this book with us? How did it come to be?
Well, one of the talks that I give when I travel around the country, I probably give 20 per year. And the most popular talk that I give is How the Catholic Church Investigates the Supernatural. So that is the subtitle of the book as well. And I think that I've gotten so many emails over the years where perhaps their mothers or grandmothers or whatever it is, they say, my children really are, they study science, and they say, where is the scientific proof that all this is real? And they said, can you write a book that sort of shows, the scientific backing behind the church's investigation? So this is actually a request that I've gotten from various people over the years, especially mothers whose sons have fallen away from the faith, given up on the faith, because they feel like the church and science are diametrically opposed. And so when I wrote this book with TAN Books, Science and the Miraculous, I spent a little bit of time at the very beginning of the book showing that the church is actually the great patron of science over the centuries. And the actual study of various things, such as you have Georges Lemaitre, who is a Belgian priest who came up with the Big Bang Theory. Or we also have the founder of genetics is also Gregor Mendel, was a Catholic monk or priest. And so various Catholics throughout the ages have served in these very important roles. And I list a whole slew of scientists over the years who have made incredible contributions to the world through science and who were faithful Catholics. And so once I sort of got that out of the way and sort of said that faith and science are not contradictory, that the church is not actually, people point to the Galileo affair and they close their eyes to everything else around it, but the church is not anti-science. So I tried to establish that early in the book, but then the rest of the book is dedicated to the various types of miracles where the Catholic Church will actually use science in an active way to validate those cases as miraculous or not. And so we have a small selection of things. We have things like Eucharistic miracles where they find true flesh and true blood on a consecrated host. And in all these cases around the world, they are the same blood type or blood group AB, which is also the same blood type as found as on the Shroud of Turin, for example. They're all striated or tortured heart muscle, and many of these samples have white blood cells on them, which shouldn't be there, of course, on dead tissue. And so these remarkable cases, and I go through the ways that if somebody wanted to make a hoax, to do a Eucharistic miracle via hoax, could you do it? Well, you can't, it turns out, because under microscopic scrutiny, you'll see that they can't tell where the bread and the flesh begin and end. They're completely intertwined. So it's absolutely amazing if you actually look at this study. And if you wanted to get those white blood cells, you would have to get them from the inside of a heart of a living person in order for that to appear on a Eucharistic host. So it's impossible. And then we talk about things like Our Lady of Guadalupe, the Tilma, or other miraculous images, the Weeping Image in Hobbs, New Mexico, for example, or in Syracuse in Italy in the 19th 1950s, that weeping statue of Mary. And so I go through all the various ways, the Eucharistic miracles, the incorruptible bodies, the healing miracles at Lourdes and in canonization causes. There are various ways where the church tries to rule these things out using science. And yes, the vast majority of cases are not legitimate miracles, but there are cases that they say there is no natural explanation for. And so this book tries to show all the ways that the church responsibly uses science to rule out miracles and invalidate them when they can. And it's absolutely amazing. And it blows most people's minds to know that the church relies so heavily on science. I think that in other faith traditions, even Protestant or even Greek Orthodox, you'll see prayer as the primary discerner of if something is a miracle. Does it seem miraculous? Looks good. Miracle. Not for the Catholic Church. It's a more developed, rigorous process, and it really involves real science. So I try to bring that to the fore with the book, Science and the Miraculous.
Mm-hmm. Michael O'Neill is with us, the Miracle Hunter, miraclehunter.com. Also has a new book out, Science and the Miraculous, How the Church Investigates the Supernatural, published by TAN. You can get it at tanbooks.com. Let's actually open the phone lines now. If anybody has a question on this topic, science and the miraculous, a great opportunity right now to call in, ask your question to Michael O'Neill, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. Michael, one thing I wonder about, I mean, you investigate these miracles, and it must be thrilling in a way when you're uncovering the truth, the science of these things. But what about the other end? Is there ever a time where you're investigating it and you walk away kind of disappointed where the science just simply isn't there, the proof isn't there like maybe many people might think it is? Are there any big misconceptions out there that it would be good to clear up for anybody regarding any specific miraculous events that the science just isn't there on?
Yeah, it's really a great question. And I encourage people to check out the Incorruptibles chapter in my book. And so this is going to be eye-opening for a lot of people, because we do have these cases around the world. And there's a very famous book by Joan Carroll Cruz that came out perhaps in the 70s or 80s, where it documents all these cases around the world. And the idea behind incorruptibility is perhaps the idea that some bodies of saints are preserved for all time in a state of perfect incorruption. Even though they're made of carbon, they don't decay in the same way that you would expect. And what's fascinating is, yes, there are some cases like that, like Saint Bernadette of Lourdes. If you go to Nevers, which is a short drive from Lourdes in France, you can go to the convent where she lived and died, and her body is still there. And it's absolutely amazing, the level of perfection. And then you have other cases. You might have gone to Siena in Italy and see St. Catherine of Siena, and she doesn't look too incorrupt these days. And, it's complicated, because I think that, we have this idea of the way that it should work, and it doesn't quite work this way. So, nobody should ever, start a sentence with, if I were God, but if I were God and I were to come up with the concept of incorruptibility, I would make only the saints incorrupt and everybody else not. So, who is a saint and who wasn't. And I'd make the incorruption perfect for all time, not just for a few decades or a few hundred years like it is in the cases of the ones we have, but for all time. But it isn't that way. And I'd make the entire person incorrupt, not just their heart, like in the case of Padre Pio or St. John Vianney, and the rest of their body is corrupted. I would make them incorrupt from head to toe. So, but I'm joking, of course. I'm not God. I don't get to decide on these things, and neither does anybody else. And the cases that are perfect are amazing, like St. Andrew Bobola. He's been incorrupt for hundreds of years. Or St. Charbel Maclouf, who's incorrupt for hundreds and hundreds of years. Absolutely perfect incorruption. But it turns out that perhaps the way to look at incorruption is how the body appeared when it was first discovered, not how long it lasts. And I think that's our wish and our hope, that we have these saints who are perfect for all time, for all generations, to come and see what that saint might have looked like. Well, it doesn't work that way. I think that perhaps the real definition of incorruption is when that casket, that coffin has been opened in the rite of recognition, when they go in for relics some decades or hundreds of years later, and the body is then found to be in a perfect state. Perhaps that's an incorruptible saint. But the idea that there are all these hundreds and hundreds or thousands of saints that whose bodies are perfect, that isn't the case. And so I actually go through some of the reports in my book, Science and the Miraculous, of cases where those bodies have been preserved. And some people might say, well, isn't this a hoax by the Catholic Church? Isn't this, they're trying to pull the wool over people's eyes and say, look at these miracles? Perhaps they are actually just helping the faithful to engage with the saints, to see them as real people, to see them how they really lived and looked. And so there has been some effort of preservation that's been done in the majority of cases. So it's a little disappointing for some people, but that's the real truth. I remember giving a talk once, and people can have me talk at their parish if they go to CatholicSpeakers.com. But I spoke at a parish, and I said that Padre Pio was not incorrupt. And a man, perhaps who was Italian and had a great devotion to Padre Pio, he stood up in the middle of my talk and started shouting at me and say, how do you, how dare you besmirch the name of this great saint? Well, it turns out that only his heart is incorrupt, and he's wearing a silicone mask. And they was speaking for 2 days in a row, and the man came the next day. He had researched his claim, and he came and apologized to me, not in front of the crowd, of course, was off to the side, but he said, you were right, he isn't actually incorrupt. I hoped he was, but he wasn't. So, we have to be careful. And I'm a believer, I'm a skeptic as much as I'm a believer, and if something is not truly a miracle, you're going to hear it from me that it is not a miracle. So in the book, Science and the Miraculous, I cover both sides, those things that we hope are miracles and are not, and those things that are truly miraculous.
Yeah, very interesting. Michael O'Neill, the Miracle Hunter, miraclehunter.com. Can you give us any clarification on the holy face of Jesus? I get a little bit confused about this one. I've been kind of doing a little bit of research on this recently, reading a book on the topic. And so you've got the holy face of Jesus on the Shroud of Turin. You've got the veil of Veronica kept in St. Peter's, which there's a whole lot on. And then you've also got what might be the linen cloth, I guess, over his face at the resurrection. That would be Manopello, I believe. I'm not really sure if I'm saying that correct. Any clarification on what would be anything on those artifacts in terms of if we want to really have authentic holy images of the face of Jesus, what can you share with us about these three objects and anything else that might exist?
Yeah, so it is a complicated issue, and you left out a couple of them. There's one called the Edessa image, or the Mendelian, which is also considered to be a cloth with the face of Jesus on it. And is it the same as the Veronica? There's some debate about that. And also there's the Sudarium of Oviedo, which you can go to Spain and see that. And that's the sweat cloth. The Sudarium is from the Latin word for sweat, and that is the cloth referenced in the Gospels, actually. And when we look at the Manopello image, it's really a fascinating image. And there are some people who have a great devotion to that image. And even Pope Benedict XVI, he went there himself to venerate that image. And it's looked at like a relic, but it's not considered to be the true cloth of Christ. We don't really know. But just looking at the image, it doesn't pass the eye test for me. It doesn't fully look like a symmetrical human face to me. And so perhaps I'm stepping out of that quicker than I should. But for me, the Manopello image is something that's mysterious. We don't know how it was made. The cloth that it's on is something remarkable. And there's a longstanding tradition that it is something like the Veronica. But to my eye test, it doesn't look like a true face. So, there's some bias that I have on that. And then we talk about the Veronica image, which is held in the Vatican, according to tradition. The last known photo of it is completely black, and so you cannot see any details on that image. But now we turn to the Shroud of Turin, which is absolutely remarkable for many ways. And I'm actually a believer that this purported burial cloth of Christ is in fact the cloth of Christ. And one of the reasons that I believe in it is because of this Sudarium of Oviedo, which is the sweat cloth, and it actually has some blood marks on it as well. the blood matches in both cloths, and both in location and type of blood. And so if you overlay the two, which is absolutely amazing to me. The other aspect is the pollen that's found on that image, and also the other mysterious qualities. They don't know how it was made. So someday we may know more about the shroud, but for me, that's the actual image of Christ.
Wow, very, very helpful. Michael O'Neill is with us, the Miracle Hunter, miraclehunter.com. You can get his new book, Science and the Miraculous, How the Church Investigates the Supernatural, at tanbooks.com. You can also book him as a speaker for your parish or any Catholic event you have coming up. CatholicSpeakers.com can help you to do that. And if you want to get a phone call in, now's the last chance to do so on this topic, Science and the Miraculous with Michael O'Neill, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. And we'll be back with Michael O'Neill, the Miracle Hunter, as soon as we're done with this break. Stay tuned.
You can listen to any of our network-produced programs at your convenience, wherever you enjoy podcasts. Hear a powerful sermon you need to share with a loved one? Maybe there's a guest or teaching segment that deserves another listen. You can find all of our shows on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, our website, and the free iCatholic radio app. Be uplifted in your faith. Listen today at thestationofthecross.com or on your favorite podcasting platform.
This is Jesse Romero, host of Jesus 911, heard weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm joined each day by a variety of co-hosts like Ruben Nava, Paul Clay, Dan Schneider, and my amazing wife, Anita Romero. We tackle Catholic devotions, spiritual warfare, family life, saving America, and everything in between. Join us each weekday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific for Jesus 911. You can also catch a bonus encore Saturdays at noon Eastern. God bless you. Keep the faith.
As a nonprofit lay organization financially independent from your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported. Through your generosity, we are able to inspire countless listeners with the gospel message and help lead them to a parish to be spiritually nourished by the sacraments. The Station of the Cross thanks our supporters who have enabled us to broadcast Catholic programs for more than 20 years. Thank you for your continued support, and may God bless you and your family.
Hello, this is Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life. I recently met a woman who said to me, "I'm alive because my mom changed her mind. She wanted to abort me, but my dad talked her out of it. When she married another man and got pregnant, my only sibling was aborted." People like her have a lot to be thankful for. Let's thank God for our lives and the lives of others. This is Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life.
Jim Havens here with our guest today, Michael O'Neill, a miracle researcher known as the Miracle Hunter, radio and TV host, also an author. His new book, Science and the Miraculous, How the Church Investigates the Supernatural, published by TAN. You can get it at tanbooks.com. And if you're interested in booking Michael O'Neill for a talk, please contact him via the Catholic Speakers Organization, CatholicSpeakers.com. You can learn more about him and his good work by going to his website, miraclehunter.com. All right, Michael, final segment here. So Science and the Miraculous, again, the new book that you have, and it goes through a whole bunch of stuff. But in terms of Marian apparitions, since you do have a catalog of so many on your website as well, any Marian apparitions that maybe might be more obscure, that people wouldn't be aware of, that really stand out to you as one or two that maybe it would be very good for people to be aware of?
Yeah, it's so interesting because people get pretty excited about Marian apparitions, and they're a little bit like a baseball team. You know, people choose the one that's closest to their home, perhaps, and they cheer really hard for it. But Marian apparitions are not essential for our faith, but they sure are exciting when the Catholic Church has said that they're worthy of belief. And it's extremely rare. We have as many as 2,500 throughout Christian history that have been claimed. And perhaps a little less than 30 have been judged by the local bishop to be supernatural. And of those, the Vatican, who doesn't have to do anything related to Marian apparitions, they just leave it to the local bishop normally. But sometimes they put an extra layer of support or recognition on top. So those are things like the Pope might visit the site, or they might canonize the visionary, or they might raise the church to basilica status, or send a golden rose there, or the Pope might compose a prayer to Our Lady under that title. There are all these various ways that are sort of indirect ways that the Vatican shows that it's fully supporting a Marian apparition. For one at-home example here, I live in Chicago, and close to me is the Shrine of Our Lady of Good Help in Champion, Wisconsin. It's an 1859 apparition to Adele Bryce, a Belgian farm worker who had visions of Mary. And the Catholic Church in 2010, on December 8th, Bishop David L. Ricken gave his formal decree of supernaturality. And this is the one and only case in the United States that is like this. There are other instances that have been claimed and some that are possible, I suppose, but this is the only one that has the recognition of a local bishop who's the first and foremost authority on an apparition case. Doesn't matter what any other bishops say, only the local bishop is the one that matters. And I only bring that one up because the Vatican has never said anything about it. And so, when the Pope came to visit in a few years ago, he went to New York and Boston and Philadelphia. If he had made a little side trip to Green Bay, Wisconsin, that would have counted as a sort of a sign of Vatican recognition, sort of an optical display of support. Or if he had sent a golden rose via messenger to that shrine, or if he had dedicated America to Our Lady of Good Help while he was here, or canonized the visionary, he canonized one of the other American saints while he was here. He could have canonized Adele Bryce while she was here, but they didn't do that. And so there has never been any recognition for a Champion in Wisconsin, even though it is a fully approved Marian apparition and the only one in the history of the United States. And so when we look at the 20th century, for example, there are only 4 cases that have been approved as supernatural by the local bishop and recognized by Rome. So you have 1917 in Fatima, the gold standard of Marian apparitions, as I'd like to call them, Our Lady of the Rosary. And then 1932, a Barang in Belgium, 1933, Banu in Belgium, and 1981 in Kabeho, Rwanda. And that's it. There are no other Marian apparitions from the 20th century that have been recognized as formally by the Church. And there are others that have been recognized for faith expression, for example, perhaps an imprimatur given to the messages at the site. But those 4 cases are the only ones we have. And we don't need more than one or any at all. We don't really need them, but they're great when they happen. So the Catholic Church is very, very careful on these cases. And then in the 20th century, we have others that are starting to get some recognition as well. So, but in Belgium in 1932 and 1933, that was the hotbed of Marian apparitions. And one of the great blessings of my work is I get to travel for EWTN and produce a travel show called Explore with the Miracle Hunter. And 2 of the new episodes coming out at the end of this month are in Barang and Bano. We have an episode dedicated to each. So I travel to the location and we have some remarkable, spectacular recreations of what that might have looked like to the children. So I encourage people to tune in at 5 p.m. Eastern time on Saturdays for that.
Mm-hmm. All right, very good. Let's go to the phone lines now. Peter in Fredonia, New York. Welcome to the program. What is your question for Michael today?
Hello, Michael. Are there any other biologic materials available for investigation? And the example I would think of here would be, for example, are there any biological materials left in the Holy Sepulchre, which might have come from the body of Christ?
So it's a great question. Thank you for that. Of course, we have the Shroud of Turin is the primary place where we would find biological after effects of Christ. And so there is still blood on that shroud, and that blood has been tested, for example. And there's the discoloration on the shroud, which theoretically comes from the body of Christ. we have Eucharistic miracles, which are, of course, are true flesh and true blood found on consecrated hosts, which match to that Shroud of Turin. And then we also have relics of the crucifixion. There's a museum or a church of the Holy Cross, I believe, in Rome, where they do have the crown of thorns, perhaps, or other elements of torture from the crucifixion. So theoretically, there would be some sort of biological material on those. And maybe in France, they have another purported crown of thorns there as well. And that was in Notre Dame Cathedral and was rescued. But is there anything that's testable? And also the Sudarium of Oviedo, the sweat cloth of Christ, also has the blood marks on it as well. So these are the existing examples, but because those samples are so old and so contaminated, they're unable to gather any DNA evidence off of them. But those are the few cases of a biological material in existence.
All right. Thank you for the call, Peter in Fredonia. Just a couple of minutes to go. Michael, just to bring things back full circle, since it is Testimony Tuesday here, bringing it back to the personal story, connecting it back in. It seems remarkable to me, and I'm wondering your thoughts on it, the way that our Lord has called you into this work. With the background of an engineering mind, it seems that that's very helpful for this particular work. Anything that you just want to say about how the Lord has connected the dots along the way to bring you into this work?
Yeah, it's truly amazing to me because, again, there's I had no plan to do this. I just perhaps had an open heart and an open mind to pursue this. I have an interest in miracles, but studying mechanical engineering at Stanford, I don't think, they wrote an article about me in the Stanford magazine a few years ago, and I think I had a few friends laughing about it because that's the last thing you would ever expect to see in a Stanford magazine article is somebody investigating miracles. But it's been absolutely a true blessing for me to be able to use my skills as an engineer and sort of being so data-driven and wanting proof for different things. And I've appeared on various episodes of History Channel's Proof is Out There because they're fascinated in this too, this idea of an engineer turned religious scholar, you might say. But I feel so blessed to follow this path, and my various trainings over the years as an engineer and even in graphic design have helped me in my work in spreading the message on these miracles. And so it's truly a dream and a blessing to be able to work with EWTN, travel the world, go to these places, and bring them back in television programs, radio shows, and share them with the world. So I never saw this coming, but this is truly a blessing for me.
Michael O'Neill, the Miracle Hunter, thank you so much for being with us today. A great blessing.
Thank you.
All right, again, his website, miraclehunter.com. His new book, Science and the Miraculous, How the Church Investigates the Supernatural, published by tanbooks.com. That EWTN series, They Might Be Saints. You can find all his good work by going to the website, miraclehunter.com. Also, if you want to book him for talks, catholicspeakers.com. catholicspeakers.com. If you want to send me a message on the show, Jim H. at thestationofthecross.com. God bless you.